Hi, this is part 30 of my preparation for Fortinet NSE4 exam. And let's start with best practices for HA, high availability. First, best practice is to configure at least 2 heartbeat interfaces. The maximum of 8 heartbeat interfaces could be configured on FortiGate for redundancy purposes. This way, if one of the heartbeat interface link fails, the cluster uses the next one as indicated by the priority and position in the heartbeat interface list. Second best practice for HA is, if using DHCP or PPPoE point-to-point protocol over Ethernet, if it facilitates communication between network endpoints, then use static configuration during the cluster initial setup to prevent incorrect address assignment. After the cluster is formed, you can put the original interface settings. Primary FortiGate election override disabled. By default, override disabled is the default setting. The criteria order evaluation depends on the high availability override setting. Note that the election process stops at the first matching criteria that selects a primary FortiGate in a cluster. So we can see there are 4 major reasons. The greater one is connected monitoring ports. Second is HA uptime. If HI uptime is higher, then it goes to primary, lower goes to secondary. Priority higher goes to primary, lower priority to secondary. And serial number, lowest serial number goes to primary, higher goes to secondary FortiGate. So the cluster compares the number of monitored interfaces that have a status of up. The member with the most available monitored interfaces becomes the primary. The cluster compares the HA uptime of each member. The member with higher uptime by at least 5 minutes, in seconds it's 300 seconds, it becomes the primary FortiGate. The member with the highest priority becomes the primary. The member with the lowest serial number becomes the primary. When high availability override is disabled, high availability uptime has precedence over the priority settings. This means that if you must manually failover to a secondary device, you can do so by reducing HA uptime of the primary FortiGate. You can do this by running the command to force a failover, command diagnose sys HA reset -uptime. This command we use on the primary FortiGate, which resets the high availability uptime to 0. And note that this command diagnose sysha reset dash uptime resets the HA uptime and not the system uptime. Also note that if a monitoring interface fails or a member reboots, the HA uptime for that member is reset to 0. How to identify uptime difference between the members? The member with 0 in the uptime column indicates the device with the lowest uptime. We can use the following CLI command: diagnose sysha dump-by vcluster, and there will be an output which shows serial number of the devices, then uptime reset CNT, and for example, if there is for the first FortiGate one parameter such as 7814/0, it means that 7814 is the difference measured in seconds, difference in uptime. And for the second device, it will be 0/1. 0 is for the device with the lowest HA uptime, and 0/1 is number of HA uptime has been reset for that device. So the first device, which is, for example, FGVM and ends with 92, it has an HA uptime that is 78/14 seconds higher than the other devices in the HA cluster. The reset_CNT column indicates the number of times the high availability uptime has been reset for that device. Primary FortiGate election override enabled. If the high availability override setting is enabled, the priority is considered before the HA uptime. The advantage of this method is that you can specify which device is the preferred primary every time, as long as it is set up and running. You can do it by configuring it with the highest high availability priority value. The disadvantage is that a failover event is triggered not only when the primary fails, but also when primary becomes available again. It takes primary rollback from the secondary FortiGate that temporarily replaced it. When override is enabled, the easiest way of triggering a failover is to change the high availability priorities. For example, you can either increase the priority of the secondary devices or decrease the priority of the primary device. The override setting and device priority values are not synchronized to the cluster members. That is, on each member, you must manually enable override and adjust priority. Override enabled. We can use using CLI command config system HA set override enable. And questions. What is a requirement for members to form an HA cluster? The most suitable answer is they must run the same firmware version. What is the default order criteria when override is disabled for selecting the primary in the HA cluster? The right order is: first, connected monitored ports; second, HA uptime; third, priority; fourth, serial numbers. Thank you.